the globe to stories here at home. This is the National News Broadcast. A very good evening to you. I'm Sharifa Tahir.
A very good evening to you. I am Dishan Veerakone, and here are your headlines for tonight.
The Gazette notification issued by the President to dissolve the Parliament and to hold the general election is within the Constitution. The 5-member judge bench unanimously reached the decision after considering the submissions for 10 days. People in many parts of the country expressed their joy over the decision of the Supreme Court. Chairman of the Elections Commission states that swift measures will be taken to conduct the general election. The President emphasizes that criminal operations carried out by underworld kingpins and drug mafia from prisons must be put to an end without a delay. The US President wants to deploy US Army to control the nationwide protests.
We now move on to those and other stories in detail now. A look at local news first. Another attempt taken by a faction of the opposition to snatch away and deprive public's right to vote was defeated today. The 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court unanimously decided to dismiss the 7 petitions filed challenging the Gazette notification issued by the President on the dissolution of Parliament and a date to hold the general election. Several parties filed fundamental rights petition with the Supreme Court challenging the Gazette notification issued by the President on the dissolution of Parliament and a date to hold the general election. Accordingly, the 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court unanimously decided to dismiss their filed petitions without taking them up for hearing. Chief Justice Janatha Jayasuriya announced the decision with the consent of the rest of the Supreme Court's judge bench, consisting of judges Buanaka Aluvihare, Sisirati Abru, Priyantha Jayawardena and Vijit Malalgoda. 8 parties, including former MPs Ranjit Madhuma Bandara and Patali Champika Ranavaka, Dr. Pakya Soti Sarvanamuthu, Kumara Valgama, journalist Victor Ivan, filed fundamental rights petitions challenging the election date and a dissolution of the Parliament. 15 other parties, including Venerable Muruthettuwe Anandathera, Venerable Athapattu Kande Anandathera, Dr. Gunadasa Amarasekara, and Attorney-at-Law Premanath Dolavatha, had filed intervenient petitions. The Supreme Court concluded the consideration of their filed petitions last evening. Accordingly, the Supreme Court announced its decision today. Legal experts emphasized that this will be remembered in history as a historic decision declared by the Supreme Court, ensuring the sovereign authority of the people.
Today, the Supreme Court, the apex court of Sri Lanka, decided to dismiss all 8 petitions filed by opposition activities calling for postponement of the election and also recalling the old parliament, and also challenging the manner in which public finance have been handled. But accordingly, it is clear that His Excellency the President has lawfully dissolved the Parliament. Election Commission had acted lawfully by going beyond 3 months, which is set out in the proclamation of the President, and the accounts had been lawfully handled. And furthermore, it's also obvious that there is no impediment for the election commissioners to proceed with the election process.
Now, Attorney-at-Law Chanakya Jayadeva gave a brief report to the national television of the Supreme Court decision on the fundamental rights petition filed challenging the date of the election and the dissolution of the Parliament.
About 3 weeks ago, several petitions were filed against holding elections owing to the COVID-19 situation. Now, the petitioners had so many different reliefs that were asked on that, and one of the core things were to postpone this election, saying it was not a suitable situation of the country to hold this election because of the COVID-19. Now, today, after deliberating over 10 days of hearing, the Supreme Court decided to dismiss all those petitions and not to allow leave to proceed. The technical term would be not to allow leave to proceed to go forward on the cases. Now, when a case is filed of this nature of fundamental rights, firstly, it is heard to see whether the case is worthy of being heard in argument stage. That is where we call it support. So the case was heard for 10 days for support to see whether it could go forward. if it is not allowed to go forward, it will be dismissed at that point, which we say leave to proceed is not given. And that is exactly what happened today. Now, to discuss more in depth on this matter, I have a gentleman who is a renowned journalist as well as an attorney who had followed through the period, Rajpal Abhinayaka. Rajpal, you were throughout in this case, not as a petitioner, not as anything but an observer, as a journalist, as a lawyer. Tell me what exactly were the reliefs asked and what did transpire on this?
Yeah, basically to postpone the elections and to declare the proclamation invalid, mainly. There was a proclamation made by the president, and the main relief asked for was to declare this proclamation invalid, void. And also there were other reliefs, such as, for example, regarding the consolidated fund, that the president could not draw from the consolidated fund during this period. And also about the nominations, that the nominations for the elections, impending elections, were given on holidays, and therefore those nominations should be voided. So those were basically, among other things, the main relief asked for.
Is there any specific point of arguments that petitioners made regarding this, and any counter arguments which are like salient provisions of this argument stage? Because I know it went for 10 days or more, and there were a lot of legal arguments were made. Any comment on the arguments that were made?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main argument was that it's, on the part of the petitioners, was that this was not democratic, that it goes against the franchise. And strangely, the counter-argument was also that it goes against the franchise, because people have a right. Ramesh Disula, President's Counsel, who appeared for Mr. P.V. Jayasundara, President's Secretary, basically reiterated the fact many times that the people have the right to franchise. They have to elect the government of their choice. So if they are not allowed to do that, some collateral reason. In fact, he said that the petitioners are all mala fide, that their bona fides are in question, in other words, that they have come to court for collateral purposes, meaning that they have come for their own political purposes and not due to democracy or any of these ostensible reasons that were given. So those were the main arguments, that the petitioner said the people have a right to franchise for whatever reason, that their right to franchise is violated. They cited the 2018 case, and they said that the judgment here, the order here, should also be on the same line, but obviously it didn't work out.
Now, what will happen next?
Well, next, I think they should fix a date for the elections, and I think that will be the task of the commissioner. Now, they challenge that also. They said that it's not the commissioner who should fix the date for the election, that once the proclamation is made, as you know, the date for the proclamation is given in the proclamation. Date for the election is given in the proclamation. But they said that the proclamation is void because 3 months have passed. Actually, 3 months would be up today. But they said once the 3 months is passed, the proclamation is automatically void. And therefore, and they also took up the position that independent commission for elections cannot fix the date for elections. But obviously did not uphold that position.
Today, that's the order from the Supreme Court. The petitions filed challenging general elections and so many things, in also challenge technical grounds that were challenged, all were disregarded, and the petitions were dismissed without further hearing from the preliminary hearing itself, without giving a leave to proceed. That's it. Thank you for joining us.
Now, in the meantime, many people in the country expressed their joy by lighting firecrackers following the declaration of the Supreme Court decision.
Moving on to more stories, Chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapri, says that swift measures will be taken to conduct the general election following the Supreme Court decision. A special discussion is set to take place tomorrow with the Commission officials to decide on the future proceedings. Chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapri, said that according to the decision made by the Supreme Court, the Election Commission is faced with the need to take swift measures to nominate a date to hold the election and to proceed with other relevant procedures accordingly. He said that a special discussion is set to take place tomorrow morning with the Commission officials to decide on the future proceedings. He added that a date to hold the election would not be possible to reach at the meeting as the final draft of the health guidelines is expected to be submitted at the end of this week. He also pointed out the need to discuss on the opinions of the deputy and assistant district election commissioners when deciding on a date to hold the election. Discussions also should be carried out with the political party secretaries and other stakeholders in this regard. He said that a gazette notification including the names and numbers of the political party and independent contestants is expected to be issued promptly.
දේශපාලන පක්ෂ දිස්ත්‍රික් ලේකම්වරු යනාදීන් සමගද අපි සාකච්ඡා කිරීමට අවශ්‍යයි. තරඟ කරන පක්ෂවල සාස්වාදීන කණ්ඩායම්වල තොරතුරු ඒ වායේ අපේක්ෂකයන්ගේ නම් සහ අංකත් අපි ඇතුළත් ගැසට් නිවේදනය අපි කඩිනමින් නිකුත් කිරීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Meanwhile, government printer Gangani Lianage has said the process to print necessary ballot papers for the upcoming general election commenced today.
Now, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa emphasizes that criminal operations carried out by underworld kingpins and drug mafia from prisons must be put to an end without delay. President Rajapaksa made these comments during a discussion with the prison officials to review the current status of prisons held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday. Specific information relating to criminal activities and drug peddling operated from prisons has been received. The President said that general public is appalled by this situation. President Rajapaksa emphasized that the existing shortcomings of the Department of Prisons will be removed and the system will be entirely overhauled. This restructuring process will be implemented through a committee comprising of the Secretary of Defense, the Army Commander and the Inspector General of Police. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that he will take necessary and adequate action to rectify the lapses in the prison system amid many challenges posed against him. He said that the public elected and gave him power to carry out such tasks. Therefore, he will uphold the trust placed on him by the public. He said that criminal activities, drug peddling and terrorist activities are operated from prisons. Speaking at the meeting, President Rajapaksa said that this issue has to be rectified. He said that the prison's officers should take action to eradicate the use of mobile phones within the prison premises. If prisons or police reach a state of collapse, it will adversely affect the maintaining of law and order in the country and eventually affect the national security, the President added. The President also said he always welcomes the right conduct on the part of officials despite their political affinities. The President also advised the relevant officials to conduct all actions including the training of officers and providing incentives under a supervisory team. The President further said that corrupt and inefficient officers should be identified and should take appropriate decisions regarding them. Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva, Secretary to the President Dr. P.B. Jayasundara, Secretary of Defence Retired Major General Kamal Gunaratna, Secretary to the Ministry of Justice S.M. Mohammed, Commanders of the Tri-Forces, Acting Inspector General of Police, Commissioner General of Prisons and the high-ranking officials of the police and the Department of Prisons attended the meeting.
In the meantime, the High Commissioner of Bangladesh in Sri Lanka, Riaz Hamidullah, paid a farewell call on Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa at the Temple Trees this morning. High Commissioner Hamidullah, who served in Sri Lanka for nearly 4 years, expressed his gratitude and appreciation to the Prime Minister for all the support extended to him during his tenure. Noting that during Prime Minister Rajapaksa's time as President, Sri Lanka-Bangladesh relations were at an exceptional level, High Commissioner Hamidullah hoped that relations would be further improved in the coming years, particularly in areas such as trade, agriculture and fisheries. Prime Minister Rajapaksa thanked the High Commissioner for his work in Sri Lanka and also asked him to convey his gratitude to the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, for her recent phone call to wish Prime Minister Rajapaksa as he marked 50 years in politics. Prime Minister Rajapaksa also commended the Mother Language Day program jointly organized by the High Commission of Bangladesh and Sri Lanka's Ministry of Education earlier this year and requested the High Commissioner to urge his successor to continue that work. The High Commissioner, on behalf of Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, extended an invitation for Prime Minister Rajapaksa to visit Bangladesh at a convenient date in the future. Meanwhile, Ambassador of Sri Lanka to Norway, Godfrey Kure, called on the Prime Minister today.
Today is the 33rd remembrance of the Araneta Baku Massacre carried out by the LTTE terrorist organization. This has been identified as the most brutal Bhikkhu massacre to occur since the colonial era. During the latter part of the decade in 1980, Mangalagama, Uhana Maha Oya and Lahugala and Bakialla in Ampara districts were constantly under the threat of the LTTE. The residents of these areas often spent sleepless nights hidden in surrounding woods. During this time, a group of bhikkhus in Sri Vidyananda Pirivena, which is considered as the first Pirivena established in the eastern province, engaged in a 7-day-long Dhammacharika in Kalaniya and Kalutara areas. 41 Buddhist monks, including Samanera bhikkhus, were engaged in this tour. The Dhammacharika was organized by then Chief Parivenadipati of Ampara Vidyananda Pirivena and Chief Judicial Prelate to both northern and eastern provinces, Venerable Hagoda Indrasara Thera. When the bus filled with the bhikkhus reached Nuvaragalathanna area along the Maha Oya road in Ampara, a group of armed LTTE terrorists had blocked the road and mounted the bus, ordering to steer the bus forward. The leader of the armed LTTE terrorist group, Reagan, who was identified as the divisional leader of the LTTE, had ordered the bus driver to steer the vehicle into a forestry area in Araneta. After ordering the bus to be stopped in a location at about 200 meters away from the main road, the armed LTTE terrorist group had started to brutally attack the bhikkhus with various blunt weapons and later shot them with fully automatic firearms. Parivenadipati of the Vidyananda Pirivena, Venerable Hagoda Indrasara Thera, and 31 Samanera bhikkhus succumbed to the severe injuries sustained from the attack. Also, 3 civilians who had travelled in the bus had died from the attack. Only 10 Buddhist monks were able to rescue their lives, though 9 of them had been permanently disabled from the assault. This incident was recorded in history as the most brutal Bhikkhu massacre to occur in the country. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa issued a special statement in remembrance of the 33rd anniversary of the Araneta Bhikkhu massacre. He said in the statement that no person was certain of their lives until the humanitarian missions were conducted in 2005 to bring in a respectable peace in the country. He said that Sri Lanka was transformed into a sanctuary for all citizens to live their lives peacefully and without fear after sweeping off the brutal terrorism from the country in 2009. However, it is known that the Buddha Sasana in the country faced a dark period after 2015. The Buddhist monks were massacred mentally in a similar manner in which the LTTE physically massacred the Mahasangha in the country. The right to bury a Buddhist monk in the northeastern area was abolished. Mahasangha took countless efforts to elect a new leader with the aspiration to change the prevailing situation in the country amid many insults and humiliations. He said that the president has appointed a presidential task force to protect the Buddhist heritage in the eastern province, directing his attention to eradicate hardships faced at present as well as in the past. Meanwhile, a full-night Pirit chanting was held at the Sudarshana Rama temple in Biyagama yesterday in remembrance of the brutal Bhikkhu massacre. A program to extend floral tributes in remembrance of the 33rd anniversary of the Araneta Bhikkhu massacre was held at the Ampara Vidyananda Pirivena. The program was organized by the director of the Pirivena and chief incumbent of the Araneta International Buddhist Center, Venerable Kirindivela Somarathana Thera. A Satyagraha campaign was also held in front of the monument built at the location where the massacre of the bhikkhus occurred. Secretary to the Buddha Sasana, Cultural and Religious Affairs Ministry, Bandula Harishchandra, was also present at this occasion.
Sri Lanka's fifth executive president and current Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa completes 50 years of political career. Now, let's take a look at a brief report on the services rendered by the Prime Minister towards the nation. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who began his political career by entering the parliament as the youngest parliamentarian on May 27, 1970, engaged in revolutionary politics in the country. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was one of the key figures who contributed in putting an end to the 17 years long governing regime of the United National Party. On March 16, 1992, he commenced a protest walk from Vihara Mahadevi Park to Kataragama against the government of the time. He engaged in the protest march along with others to Kataragama amid the prevailed terror period without even considering the threats on his life. As a young politician, he commenced this walk on behalf of the nation at a time when the entire country was feared with a state-sponsored terror which silenced farmer, labor, youth and student movements. The nation, fed up of the intimidations and horrors at the time, joined the walk, forcing then government to stop youth disappearances, mishandling the Employee Provident Fund and deceiving the poverty-ridden people with the Jana Savya. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa also led those from the south who voiced against the state terrorism in the 88-89 terror period. He also acted through legalities to free the nation from the prevailed terrors by making deliberations to the international communities on behalf of Sri Lanka. He also stood in support of Palestine cooperation as well. In one occasion, clashes in the upcountry communities were doused with the mediation of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, which averted a potential devastation in the area. The Tamil leadership in the upcountry praised the Prime Minister in this regard. He was also a close friend of the fisheries communities.
And that's a wrap of tonight's Primetime News. Until we meet again next time, do take care, stay safe and good night.
Good night.